welcome to another Mapping It Out Wednesday. Hello, Akila. How are you?
You know what? I couldn't be better. Thank you for
Oh, that's
asking.
lovely. I love
What
this.
what about yourself?
I'm good on this beautiful Wednesday, and I'm excited because today's topic is very selfish on my part.
Okay.
Well, because I actually had an experience with someone who is very demotivated. And
Ah,
I thought that would be a really interesting conversation. And just for everyone listening, so typically we either get people that ask us a question and that's what we pick Akila's brain for, or Akila has thought about something brilliant and says, I want to discuss that. And so today I asked Akila if we could discuss demotivation because we've talked a lot about motivation, obviously
mhm.
the topic of the show, but it would be nice to talk a little bit not only about how motivational maps can help someone, but really kind of a little bit around what is demotivation. I think a lot of times people don't really, they know that they don't feel great. They know that they're unhappy. Those are some of the words they use, or they look unhappy is another one. But I thought it'd be great to start with what is demotivation?
There are many levels or many things involved in demotivation
Mhm.
because every one of our motivational dimensions have potential demotivators. So when we're talking about the motivation, it shows up in so many different ways. Um, I remember one gentleman, he had called me. He had found me on Facebook, or sorry, LinkedIn, and he called me about me purchasing or working with him. And we got into a conversation, and he was so upbeat. He was the consummate salesman. He was fantastic. And I said to him, do you know what? I would, because his was a competing product, if you like, with
Mhm.
motivational maps. And I said, I'd like you to do this, do a map, and I'd like to do one of yours, and then we can discuss it. And he said,
Oh.
that's a good idea. So I sent him his map, and when it came back, his overall motivation was 39. And I'll explain what that means in a moment. And I was going, this can't be right. Not the way he sounded. So finally, you do what you have to do. I sent it to him, and in the debrief, I said, it's showing that you have a motivation level of 39. He goes, that's right. What? He says, that's right. He says, I hate my job. I
Oh, wow.
hate what I'm doing. And then he went into this thing. And after the debrief, he was so blown away. He says, and even now when he tells people about me, he says, the woman is a mind reader because she knew what are the things that were really bothering me, you know. But I'm not a mind reader. It's what you tell us. We just reflect it back to you, you know.
That's
But
funny that you said that. I hear that a lot from people. Like, do you have, or the other day, someone asked me if I had cameras in their office.
and so that really tells you that some people can be demotivated, but they don't show it.
Hmm.
But and there's some people who can be demotivated, and you have no, um, you have you can't miss it. Is what
Mm,
I'm trying to say.
yes. Like
Um,
my example of the person that I'm talking about, I couldn't miss it.
and sometimes in a working situation, people will go to extremes when they're demotivated not to do their job.
Mm.
In England, there was this one person who wanted a day off. And he actually beat himself up. He got a rock and bashed himself in the jaw so that there were bruises and stuff, and he took the day off.
Oh my
Basically,
God.
he actually went to the police station and reported that he was basically mugged. And when the police investigated it and found out that he wasn't, he had hurt himself, he got into trouble because
Well,
he was for filing a false report.
oh my gosh.
But that was for a day off. There was this one woman in the States, and this one just blew my mind. For her first 3 months on the job, she looked busy. What she was doing was keeping a journal on what she wasn't doing at work. You know?
Okay, both these examples, wouldn't it have just been easier to do the work?
You would think, but if they didn't really want to do it. But this woman, she went one step further. When she was fired for not producing 3 months later, she sued the company.
On what grounds?
They fired her without reason because she was busy all the time. But her journal, once the judge saw her journal, he threw the case out.
Well, yeah. She documented her not doing her job. Yes.
Exactly.
Oh my
Exactly.
goodness.
So those are extreme cases.
Yeah.
But for most people, what I say, if you're thinking that, for example, you could be really demotivated by a task that you have to do.
Mhm.
And when you hear yourself saying, I just don't have the energy for that, that's a sign that whatever that is, it's a demotivator for you.
Mhm.
So when that's the case, you have to ask yourself, okay, so that's a demotivator, but why? What is it? What am I trying to avoid? What is it not satisfying within me? I'll tell you, I do not like doing laundry.
Mm.
And so eventually, when the laundry kept piling up and piling up and piling up until somebody else does it, I finally thought, I hate having laundry pile up. I found somebody who does my laundry. We drop it off, we pick it up the next day. She washes, she folds, she's great at getting stains out. It's a pleasure doing my laundry now.
I love that because that really is about, okay, it has to get done. How do I get this done and not feel the drudgery of getting it done? So
Exactly, exactly. But when we talk about demotivators, would you mind bringing up that chart? And I will start with, I'll start at the top and work my way down to what it looks like, from being highly motivated to being highly demotivated.
Let me know when you see the
I see it. It's
slide
up there.
that you created. There we
Yeah,
go.
it's there. So we've got it up. So
Right.
let me talk about these numbers here. When we're talking about motivation, we're talking about you and only you. Motivation doesn't compare you to anyone else because there's nobody else really like you. Even twins don't have the exact same experiences. There may be some similarities, but it's the way you intake information. It's the way you process information. So it's not just, we've talked about motivation coming from your environment. It's all your past experiences.
Right.
But no two people experience things the same way. If you've ever been to a movie or a lecture, and afterwards you're talking about it, you will notice that sometimes something happened and they never even picked up on it. That was like me the first time I went to see Sixth Sense. And we were discussing it afterwards. And somebody said, well, I sort of got suspicious when he never touched anyone. And I said, what? I pay attention. I didn't see that. I had to go see the movie again to prove it to myself that I missed it.
To realize he never touches anyone.
Exactly. But myself and that person experienced it differently, because I was trying to figure out what was happening and that person was observing. Yeah. So our experience for that movie was different. And everything in life is like that. So when you look at this is your spectrum. You can go from zero motivation, I hope you never get there, to extremely highly motivated.
100%.
And each one carries different behaviors. So if we start with the optimum zone, in the optimum zone, what we're saying is that you are almost vibrating with excitement. And if you've ever felt that, you know what I mean. It's just, you can't help but be excited, looking forward, just, and you will do whatever it takes to get that done.
Mhm.
That is the optimum motivation. And that's from the 80 to 100 zone. And when you're in that zone, you can be producing up to 120% of your normal productivity. You get things done really fast. And I'm sure there's people who are listening to say, yeah, I've been there. I do that,
Yeah.
all the time.
Mhm.
Now, if that's a great zone to be in, but it can also lead to burnout if you don't take care. And burnout flips you to the opposite end. And you'll see
Yeah,
when
because you
get that.
can't really sustain 120%
No, you can't.
for long periods of time. I mean, that's we all have seen that happen in the workplace. So that's a really great cautionary moment
And
there.
I have seen that where somebody went from that green zone into the red zone
Mhm.
within a year.
Mhm.
And because we do the assessments for some companies each and every year. And I looked at it and I thought, that quick a flip. So we had a conversation as to, if there was something going on in her home or anything like that. And she goes, no, I'm burnt out and
Mhm.
I know it, but I don't know what to do about it,
Mhm.
you know. And when it comes to burnout, the only thing I have found that you can do about it is take the time off to take care of yourself.
Yeah, to recharge, because um that is also a sign of demotivation, is being burnt out. And
Yes,
we don't always equate burnout with being demotivated, but it really is a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation there, because one causes the other causes the other.
and what I find interesting is burnout doesn't always happen from work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I suffered one period of burnout, but it was my work. I'm usually in the blue zone or green zone. Okay. I
Mhm.
flip flop between those two, and we'll explain the blue zone in a moment. So I'm always on the go. I'm always excited. But when emotions were added to that because of an illness in my family, and after everything was okay, I was euphoric after the operation was successful
Mhm.
and thought, okay, this is all finished. A week later, I'm speaking to a client and a friend, and thank God it was a friend. And I burst into tears, and I don't know why. No. Um, and it was because that added such a layer of emotion. It's like after an event, I started to process what had happened and all of that. And I couldn't carry on with my work the way I did. I ended up taking 6 months off,
Mhm.
because that's how long it took me to overcome that. But now that I know that, when something's going wrong with one of my family members, I take the time I need to deal with that rather than taking it on top of my normal energy.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the fact that you spoke about bursting into tears, because I
Mm-hmm.
think that's also something that we don't often talk about, is that, tears are a release of energy. They're a release of emotion,
That tension, yeah.
that tension. And so a lot of times we will sort of look at crying as a negative and not realize that biologically that is actually a release of tension, a release of emotion. And if you think about it, it's as simple as, after someone has what we call a good cry, they then feel relaxed, they feel better. And again, it's because they've had that all bottled up inside of them
Oh,
and it
yeah.
had no place to go. and eventually the body has to release it, and it releases it in the form of tears. And I think that's a really important thing, is that we have turned crying into a negative, and we haven't recognized that it's part of our biology.
So one of the things I learned from that is that it is wonderful if you have people who you can be real with. They don't get embarrassed about your cry. They just hand you a tissue. They don't try to make it better. They just let you release your emotions, and then you can move on. Yeah. And you have to take care. It's sleep, it's nutrition, it's all of those things which our brains need, because what the brain is doing, it's allocating resources to our bodies. And when we're going through something like that, it can't predict how much resources you're going to need. So it's going to give it to you, but you don't always have all the resource you need in one area.
Yeah.
And it has to keep adjusting. So it's a physiological thing as well as an emotional thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So let's jump back into the chart, as they say.
So the blue zone is where we are between 60 and 80. And in that zone is we are happy with what we're doing. We're satisfied with what we're doing. We're working at 100% of our capacity. It just means that there may be tiny little things that's frustrating you. You think about it and then it's gone. It's not something that you keep in your mind as to, oh, this is really bothering me. There may be a bottleneck, or there may be just a little thing. So you forget about it. But if that thing isn't fixed, you can move down into the risk zone. Okay. And if you were to get into the risk zone, and people's risk zone can be, it's not you hit 60 and then you move into the risk zone.
Yeah.
There's some people who are normally highly motivated, and they tend to hit that risk zone around 60, 65, and they go, oh, that's when you start to disengage a little bit from work. It's like you may find yourself not staying to finish a project. I'll do it tomorrow. It's not worth my time today. I'm tired. When you start saying, I'm too tired, when work is so draining for you, if it's not a physical task, it is giving you a message. And that message is, there's something here which is depleting your energy, because remember, motivation is all about energy.
Energy. Yep.
The optimum zone, that's your highest energy. And as we go down this bar, it's energy getting less and less and less. So pay attention to that. And if you're not sure what it is, or you can't pinpoint it, get a motivation map done. It's the only thing I know that will help you. Because if you're in that risk zone, what happens is you wait for it to change before you leave. But the question is how can it change if you don't know what it is and you can't express that to someone else? And it's actually one of these things that is not just true in work relationships, or your relationship with work and the people at work. It can also show up in personal relationships. That's when you start to take notice of other people around you. Somebody who may be giving you some emotional support that you don't feel you're getting at home. And these are the things that can lead to outcomes that can impact a marriage or a relationship very negatively.
Yeah, that risk zone really does mean risk in all aspects.
That risk zone is what I call the drift zone, where you're drifting apart from something that
or someone
meant a lot to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this example here, we have someone that is at 54%. And earlier in the story you told us earlier that salesman was at 39% as
Mhm.
well. So at 51, you're in that risk zone, which
Yeah.
you just discussed.
Now,
What happened at 39 to the salesman?
we'll get to there.
Yeah.
But here is the thing, is when you're in the risk zone, you're starting to get demotivated. This is where you may take a longer lunch. This is when you will take a day off because you need a mental health day. You know, you're a little bit more relaxed about taking time away from work. Whereas in the other two zones, the higher zones, it's not something you even want to do. You know, it's like if you have to take a day off, it's darn, I wish I didn't have to. I would like to get this done. But in this one, you get more relaxed and you're saying, hey, I deserve it. I worked hard. The
Mhm.
important thing in there is people can stay in that risk zone for years and nobody will notice because they haven't lost their competence. They're still able to do the job, but they're not as motivated to do it.
Yeah.
And
That excitement, that feeling of energy is diminished.
yep, there was a study done in 2012 by Harvard, and they did 350 companies, and I think it was 35,000 people that the study was about. And they found that the people who were most demotivated were managers. They'd been in the job about 7 years. They were college educated, and they were very demotivated. And one of the reasons for that, a lot of people become demotivated because they're bored. They know how to do their job. So you see in a lot of companies when people performance starts to drop, they'll go, oh, let's send them for another course. Well, they don't need to learn new skills. They need to have something more creative to do, something where they are
A
learning
new
not the
challenge.
new skills, but part
Yeah.
of the job.
Yeah, a new challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, they need that challenge. And when you don't have a challenge in your relationship or at work, you start to get bored and your mind starts to drift.
Again,
And
another sign of demotivation is
they
that
definitely are.
of boredom. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
And I was listening to it last night. Like, I mean, when you are bored, even at home, you think, hey, maybe I'm hungry because you're trying to fill something that's missing in yourself.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it extends to work and it extends to relationship. It extends to our entire life.
Mhm.
So think about if you're challenged, still challenged about something or not. And if you find that you're not being challenged, maybe it's time you took up a new hobby or found something to do differently or something that used to interest you. Why did it stop interesting you?
Mhm.
And is there something that's happened since then that can revive that interest? Or maybe you just got truly bored with it and want to do something else.
It's time to move on. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's that telling you is you need a change of some sort. It doesn't mean you have to leave. It just means you have to know it to be able to tell your company in a very nice way or your boss. So your boss is not going to change anything if they don't know.
Mhm.
Your spouse or partner is not going to change anything if they don't know that you're dissatisfied.
Yeah.
So we have to take responsibility for our own motivations as well and the state we're in.
That's really beautiful. Okay, for the interest of time, let's go into the action zone.
Ready to go down into
Yeah.
the next one.
Mhm.
This one, the action zone, is if you hit the action zone, what this is saying is you need to take massive action to get out of it. Because what the action zone can look like, it can look like depression. I'm not saying it's depression. I'm not a doctor qualified to say that, but it looks like depression.
Mhm.
It's when you start hitting the snooze button. You don't feel like getting out of bed to go to work. It's when you start taking more days off because I just don't feel like it this morning. or you start getting psychosomatic illnesses to justify you not being able to do the things that you are disenchanted from. And it definitely is disenchantment. The only reason when somebody hits this, the way I look at it, is you're on your way out unless massive action is taken involuntarily or voluntarily. The problem is voluntarily doesn't work because you are so in the weeds, you can't see a way out of this. Okay. So at work, you may see people who are going around and chatting with other people. They're not doing their work, but the problem is not just that they're not doing their work, they're distracting other people from doing theirs.
So it sounds like the two stories that you told, the gentleman that beat himself up and the woman who left the journal, they might, again, we're not diagnosing, we're just using examples. They might be in the action zone.
I would definitely think so, because they weren't taking anything. They weren't at the point where they were taking responsibility for their own motivation and making things better.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, and you would be surprised how many people are in that action zone, and people just let it go. Coworkers think, oh, you're in a bad place, or they're depressed. Well, yes, they probably are, but they wouldn't know to go see a doctor until they know that they've depleted so much of their energy.
Yeah.
But like I said, we don't make that diagnosis. And if you're a coach, I strongly recommend that once you know where they are, you make sure you say to them, here is what it feels like. Here, is this what it feels like to you? And when you describe their feelings, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yep, that's what it feels like. Well, as a coach, I don't deal with things like this. There are counselors, there's other people that you should be seeing.
Yeah, and I just want to put a little disclaimer in this to say that, again, for those of us who are ICF certified coaches, we know that coaching and therapy, coaching and counseling are very different. And that if you find that someone is in this zone, it's a good opportunity to refer them to a professional that can help them in terms of their aid.
All we can do is refer them. We can't make them go. And so that's how you can go down that path from highly motivated to demotivated. And it's also how you can go up the path if you are willing to take strong action or massive action to move out of where you are, because for the first time you realize where you are. And most people don't want it. So it's a way of giving them back control over their lives, because by the time they hit that action zone, they don't feel like they're in control. They feel like a victim. Things are happening to them. And if there's some way that they can start taking control and they can see themselves moving up there. There was one woman that I coached in a working situation. And when I started, her motivation was 11. Now, from my conversation from her, I knew it was the situation at work. She wasn't that depressed. At home, she was fine, our family and stuff. And in 4 months coaching, I could see the improvement. And then we did the motivational map, and she went from 11 to 67.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a great jump. Yeah.
And yes, because she was taking action and she had somebody to talk to her about it. And she was saying, well, I'm still feeling like this in this situation. How do we handle it? So we do the question, well, bringing realization to some of the limiting beliefs that she had. And it freed her up to move on to the next level.
I love that. That's really great. So to sort of summarize this and recap a little bit, because now we're out of time, but that's okay. That's okay. Is one, what I love about this conversation is that demotivation is not the end. It
No.
really is, it's an opportunity to have conversation with people to really figure out what is going on with you. What's happening? Why am I feeling drained? Why am I losing that sense of having excitement and energy? And how can I fix it? Right? Ultimately, how can I fix it? And if I'm at a point where I cannot take action, at least making sure that I get the resources needed to take action, or
Hmm.
hopefully. Um, when the other thing that I really love about this is that how well you've highlighted how motivational maps can really uncover these hidden things, these things that require us to talk about them that we may not always have language to talk about.
Yeah.
So I love that. This has been a great conversation. I'm glad we did demotivation.
Great question. Thank you for it.
No problem. And if you are interested, those listening, if you're interested in learning where you're at in terms of your motivation, understanding what are the factors that are important to you, what are your top 3 motivators, Akila is still providing the offer of giving a motivational map assessment complimentary, as well as a debrief and a coaching session. And she is the maven, the guru, the person you want to do your motivational map with. So, with that, I will say thank you, Akila, for your wisdom and this really beautiful conversation around motivation and demotivation and the factors of that.
I thank you for a wonderful session.
All right. So, we will see you all next time, next Wednesday, with a new topic or even a new person, perhaps, that talks about how they're using motivation in their motivational maps in their business. Bye.